invite you to find your sermon notes and hopefully something to write with. They are in your bulletin. We are in the midst of a series looking at the very beginning of the Sermon on the Mount as Jesus begins by telling us 8 different secrets for happy living. And today we're going to look at probably the most misunderstood attitude, and that's the attitude of meekness. Now, we talked about the fact that blessed is the same thing as happiness, and so our passage this morning, if the pastor would have done the right thing here, and just to keep going, you know, blessed are the meek, for what? They shall inherit the earth. I didn't help myself earlier when I was doing something, so George, sorry. I forgot to do this. Pay no attention.
I love this church.
Yeah. Raise your hand if you're a work in progress. Okay. Your pastor's raising both hands. Happy are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Now, it sounds kind of ridiculous. You know, we live in a world that's all about competition. And you've got to claw and scratch your way to the top. You've got to be number one. It's okay to climb over others. And you think about this idea that the meek are going to inherit the earth, and yet it often seems like to many of us that there's always going to be somebody, usually a bully, ready to take it away from you when you get it. But I think the word meek has really lost its meaning. It doesn't mean what it used to mean. Today it is a put down. If you call a man meek, you know, that's an insult. For some of us, we think milquetoast or a spineless jellyfish or something. We say meek as a mouse. It's like the lady who said to her husband, "Are you a man or a mouse? Come on, squeak up." Oh, sorry. It's not a good thing, it seems, to be a meek type of person. So let's talk a little bit about this idea of being meek. Meekness is not weakness. You need to get that. You need to understand that as we move forward today. I mean, there were 2 people in the Bible who were called meek, Jesus and Moses. And neither one of those guys were pushovers. So there's something more to that. So meekness really means strength under control. Greek word referred to a wild horse being tamed. Now, at any moment, we know a 1,500-pound animal can do whatever it wants, and yet it chooses to be controlled. It's also the same Greek word that talks about a medicine that could tame a fever. Strength under control. Some of you recognize the story about the biker gang who went into a bar and grill, and as they walked in, they noticed a truck driver who was off in the corner and was having his dinner, and one of the meanest bikers decided to go over and picked up the man's plate of spaghetti and dumped it on his head. Then he took his drink and poured it into his lap. All of the other bikers were laughing, and the truck driver got up, didn't say a word, went over, paid his bill, and left. And as the one truck driver met his buddies at the bar as they were still laughing, he looked at the bartender and said, "That guy wasn't much of a man, was he?" To which the bartender, after looking out the window, said, "Yeah, and he's not much of a truck driver either. He just ran over 12 motorcycles." strength under control. Jesus said, happy are those who do not overreact to people. I found a kind of outline that I thought was perfect for what we're going to talk about, and I didn't come up with this, but I'm going to use it to talk about this whole idea of what we're talking about this morning. And it lists 5 different ways for you and I to work on our reactions, because I know that one of these, or many of these, some of us have a lot of struggle with, including your pastor. So we're going to look, first of all, number 1. When someone serves you, you need to be understanding, not demanding. Philippians tells us, don't just think about your own affairs, but be interested in others too, and what they are doing. Your attitude should be the same as Jesus Christ. How do you treat people who are serving you? Whether they're a waitress, secretary, clerks, tellers at a bank, fast food people. Are you understanding or are you demanding? It's one of the things that I struggle with are rude people. Anybody else know what I'm talking about? Rude people I really struggle with. And sometimes I've watched them in restaurants think that the person who is waiting on them, even for the time that they are there temporarily, you are my slave and you are to treat me as if I'm the most important person in your life right now. And that kind of attitude is far from what Jesus was talking about. Now, I will tell you, I love whenever I find out that someone is a trainee. Especially we go to a restaurant, there's a trainee. I let them know right up front, you can't mess up with me. I don't care what happens. I understand you've got to get practice in all this stuff. So just let them know right up front that they are going to have it easy when it comes to dealing with me. And sometimes as I leave, I let them know they did great. I encourage them. I want them to know, as they practice more, that they will get better. I think only one time have I ever said to a trainee, I think you really need to pick another occupation. No, I never said that. I never said that. No. And many of us know, Kim and I have a habit after the second service, we usually go over to the Village Inn. And I've gotten to know them pretty well, and they know our church pretty well. They know our members. And so I've asked on time to time, how are our members doing when they come in here? Because I want to know what our reputation is out and Sandy and others have said, we love the people from your church. So if you are ever over at Village Inn and you end up finding yourself being rude, tell them you're from another church. As God's people, we've got to be understanding, because with other people, we never know what they're going through. Right. And rather than being rude and demanding ourselves, God has asked and wants to soften our hearts to care about what's going on in someone else's life. Right. Second thing, when somebody disappoints you, be gentle and not judgmental. Out of curiosity, how many of you have ever been disappointed in your life? Okay, yeah, it's one of the facts of life. Romans 14 says, accept other believers who are weak in the faith. Don't argue with them about what they think is right or wrong. Happiness comes when you accept people who haven't attained your level of perfection. Okay? When you realize that they're not going to come up, it's okay. Apostle Paul, many of us know his story. He was once a Pharisee, and he devoted himself to keeping the law, and it was real easy for him to become angry with anyone who did not keep the law, especially Christians who were there. And many of you know that he was even commissioned by the church to go get those people and to arrest them and even to have them condemned after that judgment. And so, and many of us know that when he met Jesus, everything changed. That judgment and condemnation turned to grace and forgiveness. And he himself changed, and even his encouragement to other people, as he looked at himself, he says this. He says, live creatively, friends. If someone falls into sin, forgivingly restore him, saving your critical comments for yourself. Why? Because you might be needing forgiveness before the day is out. Share their burdens and so complete Christ's law. How do you react when someone messes up in your life? You get excited about it. I told you so. I could see it coming. Only a fool would have done something like that. I would never have been that dumb. Some of us even have a secret satisfaction when we see somebody else mess up. But meekness is when people disappoint you and you instead are gentle to them and not judgmental. The one thing that angered Jesus the most, more than anything else, was self-righteous religious people who were always judging other people. God wants his people to be known for gentleness. Number 3, when someone disagrees with you, be tender without surrender. And the fact is you can't please everyone. Even children get upset from time to time because they don't get their way. It's a fact of life. I mean, that could be any one of us right now. And some of us know, the second you get crowd A all right, crowd B starts losing their mind. And, for some of us, we've realized that 1 second, we're the hero, everybody loves us. The next second, we're the scum of the earth, people are mad at us. It's just one of those things. But it is possible to still be tender to others without surrendering who you are and what you believe. The test of maturity is, how do you handle disagreeable people? People who irritate you, people who like to contradict you, people who like to argue with you. Anybody have anybody like that in your life? Yeah. They like to start fights. Well, the 3 things you can do. You can just retreat in fear and just clam up and say nothing. Or you can attack back in anger. Or you can respond in love. Meekness is not just compromising your convictions. It's possible to be tender without surrendering what you believe. It's not being a doormat and giving in all the time and letting the other person have their own way. That's not meekness, that is weakness. It's also not reacting in anger. If someone disagrees with you, that you completely lose your mind. Veins start sticking out of your neck and forehead, and people don't even know who you are anymore. Everything is not a win-lose situation. General George S. Patton once said this. He said, "You never fight a battle where winning doesn't make any difference. Don't get into an argument over something that doesn't matter anyway." Now, out of curiosity, how many of you have ever argued about something that doesn't matter anyway? Yeah, okay. Jesus would say, if it doesn't matter, you can be loving, you can be tender to that other person without having to go against anything else you believe. Note this passage in Proverbs says, a gentle answer quiets anger, but a harsh word stirs it up. Some of us know that well. James says, wherever there is jealousy or selfish ambition, there will be disorder. But wisdom from above is pure, powerful, gentle, and friendly. Underline the word gentle. That word gentle is the same as the word meek. Meekness and gentleness are strength under control. A gentle giant. Jesus says the person who is meek is tender and happy because they don't have to sacrifice what they believe. You don't always have to try to win. You know, it's that old image that you can still walk hand in hand with the person that you don't see eye to eye with. It's possible. Then in 2 Timothy, Paul told his young protege that meekness is a qualification for being a spiritual leader. It says, and a servant of the Lord must not quarrel. He must be kind to everyone. He must be a good teacher. He must be patient. The Lord's servant must gently teach those who do not agree with him. Maybe God will let them change their hearts so that they can accept the truth. For those of us who are spiritual leaders, sometimes we're the ones who need to have that change of heart. In any given situation, we've got to find that kind of power to remain tender without surrendering. I'm not to get into a quarrel. Maybe you know, even in class 101, one of the things we talked about is the importance of us as a church maintaining our unity even in the midst of our diversity. Because I don't care, even somebody that came from the same town, lives in the same house, we're not all the same. Each one of us is completely unique in how we see things. But God said you can allow that other person to see things from a different perspective, and it's okay. Happy are those who treat others the way God treats them. So we need to be tender without surrender. And then number 4, when someone corrects you, we need to be teachable and not unreachable. If you're a person who is meek, you need to be willing to be teachable. Meek people are always eager to learn. They don't pretend they know it all. They know they're a work in progress. Many of you know James 1:19. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. One of my favorite verses. It tells you how to control your temper. Because if you do the first 2, the third one's automatic. If you're quick to listen and slow to speak, then you'll be slow to anger. But if you're slow to listen and quick to speak, as some of us like to be, we are very quick to anger. We need to listen. We need to use our ears. We need to see if someone else may be right. You know, when somebody in your life makes a suggestion, how defensive do you get? Meek people don't realize they don't have the answers. And this often happens in the household. I mean, I am one who, I load the dishwasher. One of the things I love to do. And we don't get into an argument about this because after I've loaded the dishwasher, Kim never says a word. She just comes and fixes it. And I don't take offense. She doesn't take offense. She just fixes it. I'm trying to learn how she does it. Are you a person who is open to new ideas? Are you willing to be taught? You willing to have some change in your life, because the reality is things are changing all the time. And rather than, close down and become unreachable, we need to see if there is a better way. Some of you knew that I used to teach at a funeral service college. And whenever I would start with a new class, I would pretty much say the same thing. I would say, for those of you who are here and you think that everything we're going to do is all about getting a piece of paper, I wish you could pay your money and I could give you your diploma and you could leave. Because it's a whole lot easier teaching people who want to be here and want to learn than those who feel like they have to. I think God thinks the same thing about us. It's a whole lot easier teaching a people who want to learn, who don't think they know it all. And that's the kind of attitude He wants for you and I to live. To believe that there is always something new for us to learn. Will Rogers used to say, I never met a man I didn't like. Well, I've never met a person I couldn't learn from. If you pay attention, even to any person, I know I can learn from you. Now, some of it may be what not to do. But all of us have an ignorance in an area that other people are experts in. And we need each other. And as God's people, we need to remain teachable and never act like we know it all. And then number 5, when somebody hurts you, you need to be an actor, not a reactor. Now, in other words, you need to be an actor as in act like Jesus. Romans says, do not repay evil for evil. Overcome evil instead with good. That's what Jesus lived. Fact of life is you are going to be hurt. And you're going to have hurts in this life because life hurts. And you'll even have people from time to time hurt you intentionally. The question is how do you respond to that? What is your normal reaction when people hurt you? Do you retaliate? Do you want to get even? Saw the video of somebody today who had road rage and climbed onto the woman's hood and broke her windshield with his fist. We know somebody just down the road here was killed in a road rage incident. Does letting somebody get in front of you really matter that much? You can feel like I just lost and they got ahead. But showing the love of Christ is never losing.
Amen. Yes.
We need to have a meekness about us and not react. Not exact revenge. Not retaliate. But to respond with forgiveness. Even when they haven't asked for it, to act is to take that initiative. Some of you know the name Booker T. Washington, the great black scientist, faced all kinds of prejudices his whole life. And he once said this, I will never allow another man to control or ruin my life by making me hate him. Whenever you say, you make me mad, you're allowing that other person to control how you feel. And guess what? You have a choice. You can choose how you react to anyone or any situation. By acting in a way that God would want is a position of great strength. One of the clear examples in the Bible, I just read this one this week, was reminded of it. Numbers 12, if you want to write that down just to check me on this. But Moses at the time had been heavily criticized by his brother and sister because his wife, Zipporah, came from Ethiopia. And so it was an interracial marriage at the time. And they were very upset that Moses had married this kind of a woman. And Moses never defended himself. Instead, he left it to God. And as a result, God ended up saying to his sister Miriam, he says, you like white skin? You like it a lot? Well, guess what? Yours is even getting whiter because you have leprosy now. And Moses never said a word. God says, don't react to that kind of stuff. You need to act like I would act. It's the ability to handle a hurt without retaliation. Probably the great definition of meekness is found in Proverbs. Better to be patient than powerful. Better to have self-control than to even conquer a city. Some of us don't realize how much strength it takes to hold back. You need to be able to control your own emotions because ultimately it is your choice.
Amen. Yes.
Jesus promised, happy are those people who can control their reactions, for they will inherit the earth. Now, what does inherit the earth mean? One theologian put it, it means that you'll be in control of your situation, that the world is yours. The person who has self-control of his emotions, the world is his. He controls the situation because he's not controlled by it. If you're the meek person, you're no longer a victim. You control your choices. Some of you also know the name Viktor Frankl, who was a famous psychiatrist who was in Auschwitz. And he once said, they took my clothes, my wife, my kids, my wedding ring, and I stood there naked before the SS, and I realized they can take everything in my life, but they cannot take my freedom to choose how I will respond to them. That is a freedom you will always have. How do you react? Jesus is saying that happiness belongs to people with self-control. Now you might say, well, that leaves me out. I can't control my reactions. There's no way I can do that. And I would say you're probably right. But I do know somebody who can help with that.
Right.
God did not give us a spirit that makes us afraid. Instead, He gives us a spirit of power and love and self-control. And when God's Spirit comes inside of you, it's no longer about you living under your own control. It's allowing God to come inside of you and making you who He's always wanted you to be.
Right.
More and more like His Son.
Amen.
The secret of controlling your reactions is letting God's Spirit to fill you.
Thank you, Jesus.
Jesus was the prime example of this. talking about lifestyles of Jesus, and we remember as he was hanging on the cross, that he could have called 10,000 angels to that. He could have destroyed every single person around the cross who was mocking him. But instead, he showed power under control. And that power was controlled by love. This is the happy, relaxed, stress-reduced type of lifestyle that you roll with the punches. That when somebody says something to you, you don't have to react. Things don't fluster you because you're in control of your reactions. Now, I know some of us feel completely stressed out. Stressed out by relationships, stressed out by jobs, stressed out with worry about all kinds of things. But what you need more than anything else, you need to develop this quality of meekness, in this quality of controlling your reactions by the Spirit of God, to allow Him to come in and to so trust Him to take care of a situation that you realize you don't have to. So as we close our time, let me invite you to bow your heads with me. And as we come to this time, I want to invite everyone just to open up your heart now. Pray this prayer in your heart. Say, Jesus, I need your Spirit and your power in my life. I need your spirit of love. And I need your spirit of self-control. Father, I know that I am indeed a work in progress. There's still so much I don't understand, but Lord, I know I need your help in this area. Because next week when people serve me, help me to be understanding and not demanding. Jesus, when people disappoint me, help me to be gentle and not judgmental. When people disagree with me, help me to be tender without surrendering what I believe. When people want to correct me and offer suggestions, help me to try to be teachable and not to shut down and be unreachable. Lord, when people hurt me, help me to act as you would act. To choose to respond with love and forgiveness rather than to react in retaliation and revenge. Father, I want to be just like you. But in order to do that, I need your help. Father, I pray that that would be the prayer of every person here today. Hear those prayers and fill us with your Spirit. For we ask it in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, Amen.